All right, y'all. The lesson we've all been waiting for, perhaps the most interesting lesson we have prepared in section 3, Fix Your Body of the Power Playbook Community. Lesson 6, Weight Training, the means to unlock your physical potential. So, today's lesson, first time diving into actually, an actual list of examples, actual tips, actual actionable steps to take for you guys to get into the gym, start working out, start applying the concepts. You could have already been applying like the nutrition concepts, obviously, and some mobility stuff, but now this is the meat and potatoes, right? So, I guess you could say taking care of your cardiovascular, fitness, mobility, stretching, nutrition are potatoes. This is the meat, right? All of that is centered around what you're doing here in weight training. So let's get right into it. We'll go into an overview. All right. So longer lesson today. It's going to be well worth the time though. So make sure you stick around. Make sure you pay attention. Take out those note takers. For this one, we've got an introduction. Why we're doing this. Why we are focusing on weight training versus anything else. We're going to talk about some ways to move weight. Rep and set ranges explained. What is a repetition? What is a set? We're going to talk about compound versus isolation movements. We're going to talk about muscle groups and how to target them specifically. We're going to talk about warm up and cool down, creating your routine, and then what you can do for your next actionable steps. So, introduction to weight training. Weight training, we've talked about this before in previous lessons, but the average man in the United States that does not currently have a workout routine, doesn't follow any sort of fitness channel, will benefit the most from implementing weight training and cardiovascular training to gain size or to lose weight. When I say gain size, I mean muscle mass, to become stronger, leaner, bigger, faster, whatever it is. That's what the average man in the United States needs to benefit from. Relating it back to our first lesson, because that's what stimulates the primal function of our body, right? Our bodies are made to be that way. Our bodies are made to be challenged, and weight training is the easiest, most accessible way for a man to challenge themselves. So we're going to view weight training for our development, most beneficial for the average man. Weight training also is incorporated in all types of other training for other fitness endeavors. So the examples we keep talking about, if you play sports, if you are interested in mixed martial arts, if you're interested in doing long distance endurance running, if you have a different interest besides just focusing solely on weight training, this is still information that's valuable for you, because weight training is incorporated to become better at every other fitness endeavor, right? So all sports players are in the gym, or at least they should be. Maybe the training looks a little different or is structured a little different, but that does not stop them from still training in the gym, which is yet another reason for us to prioritize weight training, because if that's a foundation for every other type, why not? Why don't we just be good at the one thing, right? So we're getting ourselves in good shape. We're going to get in the gym. We're going to move some weight. That's why we're teaching you how to do this. Weightlifting is also one of the most easily accessible compared to some other like sports things, because to play a sport you need a team, right? And so a 30-year-old person or a guy in my 20s like myself can't exactly just go join a team, right? If you wanted to, or have access to training facilities like sports athletes do. So, but everybody can. I mean, for the most part, you can find a way to get into a gym, right? So, but then the last point, uh, your fitness endeavor, as far as weight training goes, will require massive amounts of discipline, massive amounts of consistency for you to wake up. If you have to go before work, to get up when you're tired and still get it done. And no matter how you feel, save, being injured or sick, no matter how you feel, getting in the gym, finishing your workout, feeling accomplished, and then continuing to reach your goals. So that's why we like weight training. Okay. Next, we have ways to move weight. So when you're in the gym, let's tell a little bit of an imaginative story here. Okay. Let's say you've never been in a gym. If you have, that's fine. Just imagine. Close your eyes for a sec. We're going to imagine you walk into a gym. You check in at the front desk, then you move in. There's some free weights you notice. There's some machines laying around. There's some bench presses. There's some squat racks. There's a cardio area, and you have no idea where to start. Okay. Here's where you start. You got to understand there's a few ways for you to be moving some weight. Okay. There's barbells. which is a free weight, considered a free weight. So if you hear somebody say the free weight area, that's barbells and dumbbells. That's a weight that is freestanding, that's not attached to a machine, not attached by a cable. It's just there, and you're going to pick it up in some manner to build your own muscles. So barbells are good for developing stability, strength, and compound movements. So a barbell, if you think about a bench press, that's what you use a barbell for. Your classic bench press is a barbell movement. Your classic squat is a barbell movement. The barbell is a long rod that weighs 45 pounds generally, and you put weight on either side, and you use that to complete the movement you're trying to complete. So that's one method of moving weight. Then you have dumbbells. Everybody pretty much knows what a dumbbell is. It's just a singular weight that you hold in one hand, also considered a free weight. More maneuverable than a barbell, obviously, because it's just in one hand. It's not this long, 6 foot looking thing. It's a steel bar, or an iron bar rather. But so it's more maneuverable than a barbell. It also develops stability, but a lot of the times it allows for a deeper stretch. Because when you're not constrained by the fact that there is a connector between your two hands, being the barbell, if it's just in one hand, you often can move it in a lot more stretched area or in a lot more mobile area than you could at barbell. So therefore, that's why we offer that there's multiple ways to do things, because you get benefits from each. But then let's say you pass the barbell. Let's go back to your imagination right now in the gym. You pass the barbells. You're like, oh, I know what those are. I know how I can use those. You pass by the dumbbell rack. Then you see these cables, right? It's a structure that has a couple benches attached to it. They kind of maneuver up and down, but that's all really the maneuvering you can get out of them. But the cable. The reason people use cables is because it provides constant tension and easy progression as it compares to free weights, right? So if you think about a free weight, let's say you're going to be doing lateral raises for lateral raises for the side shoulder, right? For your lateral deltoid. So if you're doing it with a dumbbell, you can't really do that with a barbell. That would not really make sense. But let's say you're holding a dumbbell, you're holding 20s in your hands. You're going to go out to your side. You're starting just standing up normal. You're going to go with the movement of the shoulder out to your side with a dumbbell. At the bottom, consider the fact that gravity continues to pull the barbell down or the dumbbell down, right? And as you kind of arc up this way, the gravity is continuing to pull it straight down, right? And gravity is the force that you are essentially utilizing for your progression. Whereas a cable, the force in which you are putting against the cable directly aligns with like the actual cable itself. So once you pull the way a cable works is it's like a pulley system. So the cable wraps around one pulley, goes up around another, and then it attaches to weight. So the gravity is constantly pulling that weight, but you are changing the direction of the force required to pull that weight up by moving where the cable is. And what that also allows for is constant tension. So as opposed to at the bottom of a movement, the dumbbell is kind of just hanging there. There's no really, unless you are not putting any force at all on the cable, there's no way to not have tension through that cable, if that makes sense. So that's why that's liked, because you get constant tension, which equates to you're constantly using the muscle for the entire duration of your set. So there's cables, easy progression too. All you do is pull a little pin out, increase the weight. So that's what cables are. Then we got machines. So you've walked past all three of those now, and then you see these machines, or people are sitting in them. They're doing these row movements. They're doing these lateral movements. They're doing these rear movements. They're doing pull downs even. They're doing some pressing. So why would you use a barbell and a dumbbell when there are machines that are doing essentially the same movement? Now, I'll tell you why. Let me move this so you can read that. Machines are an unnatural linear movement. So they're good for isolation because of that reason. But let's just think for a second. Let's compare bench press to a machine bench press, okay? So a bench press, you're using a barbell. It requires you to lift the barbell off the rack, move it forward like half a foot, maybe 6 inches or so, and then go down and up, all while being stabilized by your shoulder joints, right? Using the pecs to push them up, stabilized by the shoulder joints, and then you put it back. When you think about a machine, you're simply going from one end of the machine's range of motion to the other and back, to the other and back. So it requires far less stability by your shoulder joints. But essentially all that's doing is putting all of the strain on the muscle. So I mentioned already that's great for isolating a muscle, but when we want to work on overall development of strength and stability, machines are generally not used for that line of progression, right? But that's not to say that they have no place. So the reason we bring up all four is because when you're developing your workout regimen, a lot of your compound movements are going to come from barbell. Some more of your free weight exercises that you're trying to get a deep stretch in are going to come from dumbbell. Cables are also good for deep stretching. Just all depends on how you set yourself up. But we just need to understand that there's a difference between the four. They're not all equal. They don't all produce the same results as each other, but they each have a place. So with that in mind, let's move into how to define rep and set ranges. So in case you are clueless as to what rep and set means, I know I sure was when I first started, but rep is repetition. So that's each time you do a movement, a full range of movement through a movement. 1 repetition, 2 repetitions, 3. Let's say you want. Okay, I'll stop right there. A set is a combination of your repetitions. So 1 set of 10 reps would mean that in consecutive order, you perform 10 repetitions. So you do 10. Let's say you do bicep curls, and then you stop. That's 1 set. Then you rest for a few minutes, and then you go into your next set of 10 more bicep curls, okay? So I hope that helps explain what a rep and set is. But a set is a combination of repetitions. And the reason you do this is because if you're in the gym and you're trying to achieve what we call hypertrophy, which is the growth of your muscle after we've torn it down, it's a far less effective to just do the movement, all at once and then be done. What you want to do is do the movement, or first of all, you want to do your warm-up. But then once you start getting into the movements, you're going to do the movement, you're going to rest for a minute, you're going to do the movement again, you're going to find it's more difficult because you've already tired yourself out. Then you're going to pause again, and then you do another set of movements, and you realize that this is the most difficult set, right? Because you've pushed the muscle to its maximum capacity once or twice already. Now you're doing it 3, and now by doing that 3 times with some rest in between, you've essentially put more micro tears in the fibers than you would if you just did it 1 time. It's basically just more difficult, right? So if you're just training and it's more difficult, just think about life in general, right? Like nothing easy comes free. The same thing in the gym. If it's more difficult in general, I don't want to say like you should not be able. I don't want to get caught saying that, and then somebody takes that to mean like, oh well, I could only do it twice, so that was very difficult. So that means I'm going to get more gains. Like no, the optimal general guideline. We're going to read up on our first point there is 8 to 12 repetitions for 3 sets for maximum hypertrophy. So I mean, those exact numbers have been debated since weight training was a thing. But what you see most commonly is dudes will go into the gym and for every exercise, so like for bench press, for example, they'll do their warm up, they'll do some warm up sets that don't count as those first 3. They'll do some warm up sets with lighter weight than they actually need to be challenged. Then they'll throw on the weight that's challenging, and they'll do it 8 to 12 times, rest, do it again 8 to 12 times, rest, do it 8 to 12 times, and then move on to the next exercise. And that is what we consider optimal for muscle hypertrophy. So there's a couple different ways you can go about training within weight training. So there's hypertrophy, which kind of happens in the other 2 anyways, but that's optimal for specifically hypertrophy. But the other ways are strength training and endurance training, right? So if you think about your power lifters, people that are competing to lift as much weight as possible, that's what we mean when we say strength building. And if you think about your CrossFit athletes that are doing a crazy amount of pull-ups, push-ups, HIIT workouts, that's your endurance training, right? So for strength building, the optimal agreed upon set and rep range is 4 to 6 reps times 3 sets. And the major difference is it's not that they're just doing the same amount of weight less times. 4 to 6 and 8 to 12, respectively, are the amount of times you should be able to do a repetition consecutively before you begin to fail, before you begin to not be able to, before it becomes too difficult for you. So in hypertrophy, let's say you got on 100 pounds on a bench press, and you're going, and it becomes more difficult, but you're continuing to press, and right around rep 10, it starts to become real difficult, but you can still continue. So you do 11, it was real difficult, and you do 12, it was difficult, but there is no way you could have gotten 13. But you were able to get 12 with good form, and you can continue that up after you rest, of course, in between sets for 3 sets. So the difference is, if that's the case for hypertrophy, and you're trying to go into strength building, okay, they'll have like 150 pounds. If they can do 8 to 12 of 100 pounds, they'll have like 150. And you can still put up 150, but you won't be able to do it as many times, right? So you're going to be doing 4 to 6 reps. And that makes sense, because if you want to be stronger, you're lifting more weight, right? But you just do it less times. So you want to just expose the body to that higher amount of weight, but you won't be able to do it as many times. And then for endurance training, we're looking at anywhere from 12 to 15 plus repetitions for 3 to 4 sets. I mean, I have never personally been a part of the endurance training kind of thing. I focus mainly on hypertrophy and strength building, because I think those are the most effective for what my goals are and what a lot of my people I work with goals are. But this kind of thing is like, a lot of athletes do this, right? So you're trying to build up your tolerance to the weight, or to the force you're putting upon your body, so that you can endure more. Like, if you think about, like, you should be able to do, a lot more push-ups. If you're, maybe that's a bad example. We can just talk about athletes though. Like, if you're required to go through this course, let's say like an obstacle course, and you're gonna have to be pulling yourself over a wall a lot, pushing yourself up under this obstacle. A lot of people do that kind of thing, like Spartan races. Maybe endurance training makes more sense for you. But this is not all to say you have to choose one of those. You 100% can kind of just implement these throughout whatever it is you want to train, and see what you like best. See what works for you. And I also would advise that, especially as a beginner, you might benefit from trying to do less weight more times, just to get that feeling in, right? But I definitely wouldn't go into the gym and start just cranking out, sets of like 20 reps on anything, just to say you did it, and then all 20 of those are actually really easy for you. What you want to do is warm up to a point where, and this kind of comes from experience, to understand like what is difficult for you and what's not. But you want to be able to do some lighter weights to warm up, and then you start working on a weight that is difficult for you, but you can do it 8 to 12 times, right? So try each of those out. I mean, I wouldn't just go straight into like strength training or endurance training, because those are a lot more intense than just your normal, let's try and get 8 to 12 and see how much weight I can withstand for 3 sets. So try that first for sure. But for more advanced or established lifters, I should say, they're training, and this is what I do as well. They're training within 0 to 2 reps of failure every set, and within 6 to 8 reps per set. So, I mean, the 6 to 8, 8 to 12, not really as important as long as you're getting close to a point where you cannot do one more repetition. That's when you're achieving hypertrophy the most. That's when you're putting the most effective micro tears in the muscle fibers, and then those in turn will grow back bigger and stronger, right? Then there's this concept called progressive overload, which is, think about it like this. If you were to go through your workout, your first exercise, we'll just talk about bench press again. So let's say the first week you're in the gym, you can barely bench press 100 pounds 8 times, okay? And you keep working at it and then the next week and the next week. Then you find, like a month from then, you find that bench pressing 100 pounds is actually pretty easy for you, far past 12 repetitions. So progressive overload is the concept that as you become stronger, the weights and the load by which you put a stress on your muscles needs to increase to match your level of strength, if that makes sense. So progressive overload is we're trying to continuously, throughout pretty much the entire time that you are a lifter, that you identify as someone that's disciplined enough to be in the gym, getting your sets in, right? Progressive overload is what you constantly need to ensure that you are seeing and realizing gains, because you won't get stronger if you just continuously put up that 100 pounds, but it's actually easy for you, right? You got to keep increasing the weight to match your level of strength. So those two concepts defined, we'll talk about certain types of movements with the ways to move the weight. So a compound exercise, it works multiple muscle groups. So you want to think about well, actually, I'll save that for the examples. But so that's a compound exercise. It works more than just one muscle group. And isolation, oh man, I don't know what's up with me. Isolation exercise targets a specific muscle or muscle group only. So here's some examples. Squats, being a compound lift, target your quadriceps, your glutes, your hamstrings, right? And some of the abductors and adductors. But a squat uses pretty much your entire leg and some of your core actually to bring the weight down and back up. Versus a bicep curl, which when you're doing a bicep curl, right, you're doing this motion here. You're just bringing the hand up. It's pretty much only working the bicep, right? And I know that your biceps attached to the shoulder up and top. That's all. You're not working the shoulder though when you're doing a bicep curl if you're doing it correctly. So that's the difference between compound and isolation. Some other examples would be a bench press. A bench press for upper body tends to engage the tricep and the front shoulder as well as the pecs. You have rows that sometimes target the bicep and your back. Because if you think about like a bicep curl, you're pulling the weight up, right? So pretty much any pulling movement will always incorporate your back and your biceps, and any pressing movement will pretty much always incorporate triceps, chest, and shoulders, right? So that's your examples. Both types are important for a balanced routine, and you need to incorporate both for optimal strength and growth. What I'll say though is generally, a compound movement is used to develop overall strength in the lower and upper body, and they're very effective, like I said, because they're targeting multiple muscle groups at the same time, or multiple specific muscles within a group. Isolation exercises are generally just used to try and grow the size and strength of one muscle. So do with that what you will. I always try and base, and I always advise people try and base their exercises off of a compound to begin with, one or two compound movements. So you're getting in there, you're working on the strength and stability required. Let's say you're doing legs, right? So I would start off with a nice warm-up. Let's get into some squatting. You're going to target the muscles in your legs. Then maybe when you're done, you're going to move on to some hamstring curls, leg extensions, and then some calves, and call that your leg workout, right? But I always try and base what I'm doing off of a compound exercise, if that makes sense, because those are optimal for strength gains for sure. But both are important. Both have a place in your workout routine. With that said, let's talk about some essential compound movements. Being the main ones here are squats, because they target legs and core. Deadlifts are working your back, legs, and glutes. Deadlifts we talked about, I think 2 lessons ago, being they require strength from, or they require activity from, I should say, your entire posterior chain, which goes from the back of your legs all the way up through your glutes and your back. Deadlifts are great overall compound movement, very difficult to do well, and sometimes dangerous if you're going to be throwing a ton of weight on there, but they're a lot of fun when you're doing them well, and very effective. Then we have bench press, which works your chest, shoulders, and triceps. And we have overhead press, which is for shoulders and triceps. So those first 3, if you're a power lifter, those are like the essential 3 that you're getting graded on at your events, right? The squat, dead, and bench. Overhead press is there's not really competitions for that. I'm sure there are out there, but that's not really like the main one for competition. We're not saying you guys need to be competitors, but if that's what they're training, obviously, all 3 of those combined pretty much work the entire body, if that makes sense. So, because your deadlift's got the back, squats, legs, bench press, chest, and by means of being compound movements, your entire body's getting worked with those 3. But we incorporate overhead press because it's a great developer for the shoulders as well. So those are your essential compounds. And with that, we're going to get right into specific muscle groups and what you can do in the gym to target them. So for your chest, we're looking at, for the main compound movement, bench press for overall chest development. Bench press, you're laying on a bench, you're reaching up, you're grabbing that barbell with some weight loaded on the side, you're bringing it down to your chest, pushing it back up. Simple as that. Pretty sure everybody's seen or heard of a bench press before. but they might not have seen or heard of incline or decline press, which is essentially the exact same, but the only difference is, I think we talked about this in a previous lesson too, you're going from being flat to now declined or inclined. And the purpose of those is to target either the upper chest or lower chest as opposed to the chest as a whole. Both of those, and bench press too, can be completed with dumbbell or barbell. These are not specific to, just barbell. Chest flies are more of an isolation movement, although sometimes if you're doing them incorrectly or sometimes just in general after fatigue, your shoulders can be incorporated in that movement as well. But generally speaking, chest flies can be done with cables or dumbbells. Are an isolating exercise for chest, for the definition of the chest and for the strength of the chest. And we talked about flies being, that hugging motion. So imagine if your arms are straight out from your body and you're wrapping them forward, that's a fly movement. And then push-ups are essentially, they are a pressing movement. Just the difference is instead of you pressing the weight up, you are the weight and you're pushing against the earth, right? So this is not an exhaustive list, but these are the most basic. I mean, every workout you do with chest pretty much consists of pressing and flies. It's just different variations of pressing and flies. And if you guys have further questions, always remember, use your resources. Look up potential chest workouts or have ChatGPT say what can I do if I want to incorporate, a chest fly, a pressing movement, how can I base my workout off a compound movement? Or seek out some questions in the chat. Throw some questions in. Seek out coaching. I mean, I don't think you have to do all that because that's not the purpose of giving you these lessons for free, right? Is go and incorporate these in your life. But what I'm saying is, it would be a bit of a time consumer that's not worth either of our time for me to go through every single variation of every single cable, barbell, dumbbell machine with you on how to target the chest. All you need to know is that general pressing movements and flies while you're changing the means by which you move the weight, so dumbbell or barbell, cable machines, and the angle is plenty enough for you to target the chest in a workout. So that said, we'll move on to back. So for your back, the main compound movement we have deadlifts is kind of at the bottom there. But for your back, if you ever done a pull-up or a chin-up, that's a way to build body weight strength in your back. So that's kind of the same movement as a lat pull down. If you know what a lat pull down is, it's pretty much a pull up, but you're seated and you're using a cable to reach up, grab a bar that's attached to a cable and pull it down to your chest, right? While you're sitting. So pretty much all pulling movements have to do with your back, and sometimes they incorporate the biceps as well. But another option would be bent over rows. So rowing is pretty much just bringing weight off from, if you're bent over like this, let's say this is your chest and this part of my hand is your legs, you're just bringing the weight from here up to here, right? If you remember from our muscle mechanics lesson, the bent over row was actually the picture depicted that I include on that slide about back. But rowing pretty much just means bringing weight from an extended point of your body to your chest, okay? And then pulling down is the same thing, but just from an upward position instead of in front of you. And then we talked about deadlifts. We talked about lat pull downs, lat pull overs. A lot of people, even in the fitness scene, don't know this either, but your latissimus dorsi, your lats, their main function is actually kind of a sweeping thing. And it's not necessarily to pull back this way or pull straight down. It's actually like a sweeping motion. And so that's exactly what a lat pullover is. You're just taking something from behind you and you're pulling it forward. And there's machines that work for this very effectively. And what you'll notice is if you're trying to target just one muscle, like your lats, machines are generally great for that. Because if you remember, we talked about they're specifically an isolating thing and they only allow for movement in one specific plane, which is perfect if you're just trying to isolate one muscle. But that's essentially what a lat pullover is. Seated rows with a cable are also super popular. They engage the rhomboids, your middle back. Basically, you're just sitting down on a bench and you reach in front of you, so you're going to put your legs out in front of you and the cable starts where your feet are. You're going to reach forward, grab the attachment, and then sit back and then just pull that thing to your chest. So it's a row. So rowing just means pulling the weight from an extended, like from out in front of you to your chest, and then pulling down. Same thing as a pull up. I mean, you're bringing it from the top down, and then deadlifts, of course, strengthen the entire posterior chain. But here are some core examples, just like we talked about in chest. All you got to know is anything to do with pulling weight towards yourself in any direction is going to target the back. So we'll talk about shoulders. Overhead press is the main compound movement we talked about. It develops the anterior deltoid, which is that front part right here where it attaches to your chest. Right here, if you can see my camera, is your anterior deltoid. So overhead press is also good for overall shoulder and strength stability. It requires a lot of stability for you to be holding some weight above your head, right? And there's some motivation too, because you don't want to drop that weight on your head. Then we got lateral raises. So what you'll notice for shoulders is that they're very easy to just start doing isolating movements for, because there are three heads that all have kind of a different range of motion, right? So a lateral raises is when if you're just standing there with your arms to your side, you're just extending them straight out to the side. That's a lateral raise, and that works that middle deltoid head. So it isolates and defines the lateral delts. Front raises are kind of the same thing, but you're just moving the arms in front of your body instead of to the side. Rear delt flies are pretty much the exact opposite movement of a chest fly. So if you're thinking about giving somebody a hug, you just start from the hugged position per se, and you move the weight backwards, straight back, and that works on that behind the shoulder head of the deltoids. These are commonly underdeveloped just because, like the only way to target these pretty much is through isolating movements, and it's kind of difficult because you can't really see them with your eyes, or even when you have a really nice developed back, like they don't exactly add. It doesn't look like they add a ton to the physique or to your overall strength, but a lot of good comes from developing the rear delts in both of those aspects, aesthetically and strength-wise. So I advise you that if you're going to be, incorporating some shoulder days, don't forget every once in a while at least throw in some rear delt flies, develop those rear delts. And then Arnold press is similar to an overhead press, but you're going to do it with a dumbbell, and you start with the weight in front of you, and then you push it out like this. So you're kind of rotating through the movement of all three heads. So by moving back, you're using the rear. By starting in the front, you're using the front delt. And when you press up, you're using all three. So these are just the common shoulder ones. And so they're, like I mentioned, shoulders are pretty easy to just start isolating for everything. But definitely don't forget, if you want like overall strength and stability in the shoulder, you got to go through those compound movements. You got to be pushing up some heavier weight. Using the Arnold press, doing the overhead press, and we can't just get too focused on isolating, even though it makes it pretty easy to just, because there's three, specific sides of the deltoid, start isolating. But that said, moving the shoulders up, moving the arms up and out is pretty much the role of the shoulders. So anything you do in that realm will work your shoulders. We have arms. We've got bicep curls. So pretty much, I'll just say this: your arms are kind of just they are secondary movers for your compound movements. So there's not really a way to do a compound movement for specifically just arms. You can do like dips, which we'll explain in a second. But those are, dips for chest will essentially hit your triceps, but you're not targeting just the triceps with those. Or you're not targeting just the chest with those. You're hitting triceps also, I should say. So it kind of just ends up being mostly isolating exercises for the arms. But either way, for bicep curls, those are a classic for bicep growth exercise. You can do that with barbell or dumbbell. You can either just take one dumbbell in your hand and just keep curling it up, or you can grab a barbell with both hands and curl it up at once. There's hammer curls, which is the same thing as a bicep curl, except for it just changes the way your wrist is pronated or supinated, right? So instead of curling it like this, you're just going to curl it like this, bring it up like this, if that makes sense. It's kind of hard to show you with this little camera screen here, which is also why we're not really giving exact prescribed, it's difficult for me to coach every member of the Power Playbook community at once and teaching you guys specifically what to do when all these resources for how to do things exist. So that's why we're just kind of giving you general information, how you can take this and then start applying it with a little bit of your own research to see exactly how to do these things. But That's a bit of a tangent just because that made me think of that because I can't really show you how to do these exercises on camera. But a hammer curl, similar to a bicep curl, you're just keeping your wrist straight up and straight in line with your forearm instead of with your palms facing up. Tricep dips. So a dip basically is if you imagine when you were a kid, right, and you go in between the backs of two chairs and you put a hand on each and you push yourself up, that's kind of a dip. And then you go back down and you go back up, that's a dip. But the difference between normal dips and a tricep dip is pretty much like for a tricep dip, you're either you're trying to keep your chest straight up and then just bring the shoulders, the arms back behind you, then press up. But you can also do these for chest by bringing your chest down more, and then it kind of turns more into a pushing motion. You can imagine that. But tricep dips are classic too, super effective for developing the triceps. Then you have what's called skull crushers, which is a very effective tricep isolating exercise. Pretty much what a skull crusher is a barbell movement where, I mean, you can do it with dumbbells, but it's classically done with a barbell or an easy bar, which is just a barbell that's like curved. You can see those if you just walk through a gym. But a barbell, you grab it with your palms, like you're laying on a bench, okay? And you want to grab a barbell like this with both hands, bar going across your eyes, and you're just going to push it up away from your face. Without you want to keep your elbows real close to your body. So you're not trying to do a bench press where because a bench press, like the barbell is over your chest, where a skull crusher is you're just rotating, you're hinging at the elbow. You're not really pushing up, you're just hinging at the elbow. See how my elbow's straight here? You're hinging at the elbow to get the weight away from your face. That's what a skull crusher is. Then you got cable pushdowns, really similar to a skull crusher. You're just using a cable. So you're going to walk over to a cable machine, grab the weight from up here, pull it down, and you're just going to push away from your face. And that's nice because it has constant tension, as we talked about, which is what cables do. So that's pretty much arms. A lot of isolation movements, but that's kind of the only way to target muscles as small as the arms and the biceps and triceps in comparison. So now we have glutes and hamstrings. So primary exercises for working the glutes and hamstrings are we got the main compound one we talked about, squats. Considered the best exercise for leg development by like everybody in the fitness industry. I mean, bodybuilders do it, powerlifters obviously compete in doing it. People that are they're like specialists in like range of motion and movement for people. Always trying to get people to do squats. So squats, compound movement, great for developing the legs. Romanian deadlift, it's called a hinge movement. So there's two kind of main movements you can do for legs, for hamstrings specifically. But there's hinging, and then there's like your pressing movement. So pressing movement would kind of be considered like your squat, but a hinge movement means you're hinging at the hip. So if you think about standing up straight and just hinging forward, and the only thing bending being your hips, so instead of your back, that's pretty much how you do an RDL or Romanian deadlift. Targets the hamstrings. Then you got hip thrusts, which isolates your glutes effectively. Pretty much you're laying on your back, or you're laying elevated on some sort of bench, and you're bent you're bent at the hip, and you're just extending the hip up. So you're laying. I don't know how to explain this to you without showing you. You're just thinking about thrusting with the hips. Seriously, it's that easy. Like you're laying on the ground with your feet flat to the ground, and through your legs you're gonna thrust. You're gonna push your hips upward towards the sky. That's a hip thrust, and you can load some weight on that by putting a barbell over your waist. And then you got to focus on pushing that up to the sky. Like I said, you might have to Google some of these on how to do the proper form. These are just a list of exercises that are generally essential and most effective for you guys to start with. Lunges, I think it's probably pretty self-explanatory what a lunge is. You're just moving forward, you're lunging forward. So you're taking your left foot or your right foot, taking a very far step forward, and then lowering your body to the ground so that your opposite knee touches the ground, and then you're pushing back up. Targets the glutes and hamstrings. Also works to improve balance. If you can do a lunge pretty well, especially with some weighted lunges, you'll be working on the balance because it definitely takes some focus in that sector. Leg curls. I don't think I put in leg extensions, but leg curls think about the way a bicep curl works. Same thing, except for you're going to be loading, instead of your hands holding the weight, you're going to be putting the weight on the back of your calf, pretty much like by your ankle, and you're going to be curling the same, because your legs move in essentially the same movement. If you think about your hamstring being a bicep and your ankle being where your hand would normally hold the weight, you curl backwards. So you're bringing your ankles up to your butt essentially. That's what a leg curl is. A leg extension is just the opposite. So you're starting from that position with your ankle near your butt, or like in a back kind of position, and you're just using your quad to force that leg up and out away from you. So that's what a leg extension is. I should have wrote that down. Leg curls and extensions are like your primary isolating movements for your legs. Oh, that's why it's not down. We're not talking about quads yet. My bad. Okay. Leg extensions will definitely be in the quad slide. Leg curls for hamstrings. That's my fault. Ignore it. Just pretend I didn't say that. Leg press. Placing your feet towards the top of your platform. Well, I guess I did explain to you what leg press platform is. Leg press is that machine that you see people throwing. I mean, if you haven't yet, you will see people throwing a ton of weight on this thing, because it's really easy to load a lot of weight on this machine, because your legs are by far the strongest muscle group in your body, right? And if you don't have to worry about loading your back with the weight to perform a squat, obviously you can put a lot of weight on the other end where your feet are. So basically a leg press is just a sitting motion, and you're going to put your feet up on this platform, and there's weights on either side, and you just let the weight come down, and then you use your legs to press it back up. So that's a leg press, but placing your feet towards the top of the platform specifically, so that your knees are only coming to like a 90-degree angle when it comes down to the bottom of the movement. And then you push back up, that engages a lot more of your hamstrings than it does your quads. So that's why I put it there, that you use a leg press, but if you're trying to target your hamstrings, you're going to want to put your feet up towards the top of that platform. So I think that leads us into quadriceps, and I threw calves in there. Calves and quads are not connected by any means. I mean, they're connected by your leg, but they have no connective tissue between the two. But I just put it in there because I don't want to have two slides, one for quads and one for calves. So squats, once again, best exercise for leg development. It's going to be a compound movement, obviously, so you're going to get growth from the quadriceps, glutes, and the hamstrings. So that's why it's on both sides. Leg press, once again, leg press is pretty much the same movement as a squat, but the difference is you're loading at the feet instead of loading on your back. So the leg press normal foot placement will load the quads with heavier weight, as opposed to putting your feet higher up on the platform. And then split squats, commonly called Bulgarian split squats, done with a dumbbell, or you can do it with a barbell. It's a lot more difficult to do it with a barbell. You can have to like put it between your legs, or I guess you could load it on your back. That's true. You could put kind of like you're going for a squat, but then you only end up using one leg. But that requires a lot of stability on the one leg, and you kind of get into some potential areas for injury or strain doing that. So you can do it with a barbell. I recommend dumbbell. But what you're going to do is elevate whichever leg you're going to do the squat with, the opposite leg you're going to put behind you and elevate your foot on like some sort of platform. And then you're going to do pretty much just a squatting movement with only one leg. So you're just going to drop down while holding a dumbbell and then press back up with that one leg. And that isolates one quad at a time. And there's ways to make that target your glutes, because you'll find it's pretty difficult to find purely isolating exercises besides extensions and curls for the legs that are not going to work other parts of the leg as well. But mainly split squats are used for the quadricep, and they're very effective at doing so as well. They're step ups. So if you think about maybe holding some lighter dumbbells, or when you're first beginning, no weight at all, because you're essentially everything you're doing for a leg uses your own body weight as the weight itself, right? Because your weight is above the leg. But a step up would be like you're bringing one foot at a time up on top of an elevated platform and just standing up. So that's going to target your quad with some functional movement, right? So if you think about having to take a bigger step onto something, maybe getting in the back of a truck bed, stepping on top of a chair to go change your light bulb, something like that, or a ladder. So it's pretty functional movement. But a step up targets the quad, and you can add some weight by just holding a dumbbell. Leg extensions, this is what I was telling you was going to be included. And the last slide, silly me for not realizing we're talking about hamstrings only, but an extension is definitely not for hamstrings. An extension is a way to isolate quadriceps for definition and strength. Mostly definition. But you get. I guess I shouldn't say mostly definition. Definition and strength. We'll leave it at that. Leg extension. It's the opposite of a leg curl. So you're going to start with your legs at about a 90 or past 90 degrees. And then you're going to extend your ankle forward and out, if that makes sense, away from your body. And you load that up. The only way to do that is with a machine. So that's why, as I was saying earlier, machines definitely have their place because there's some things that you can't really find a way to, unless you want to tape a dumbbell to your leg, right, to do that. But anyways, then we have calf raises. So the only way really to target calves, running obviously does, but that's not like a weight training, applied tactic. That's like over time, your calves have to get used to bouncing so much that they'll grow. But as far as the gym is concerned, the only way to grow your calves is through calf raises, and there are multiple variations. So there's like a seated calf raise, there's a machine calf raise that has pads on your shoulders, and you just have to use your calves to kind of, But if you just imagine like you're standing there and you just use your calves to press up, everybody's done that, and some people actually walk around like that all the time. And if you notice, those people, they have pretty big calves. But what you want to focus on for a calf raise is a deep stretch and then a contraction at the top of the movement. And when I say contraction, I mean like squeezing the muscle at the top of the movement. And that's the case for every movement you do ever. But I just wanted to say that for the calf specifically, considering there's really only one way to do that with multiple variations. But calf raise is all you got for calves. So that leads us to core, which I think is the last muscle group slide. But your core is absolutely essential for development. One, everybody loves to have a six-pack, but two, like the core is what holds you together, if that makes sense. The core is what enables you to do pretty much every motion, every movement, because it's what's stabilizing you and engaging. It's allowing you to brace yourself, basically. So if you think about doing a squat, like you're not doing a squat if your back and if your core, the lower back part of your core is not strong enough to hold that weight up. And even just daily life stuff, you want the ability to be rotating your spine. You want to be able to look down. You want to be able to look behind you. That's all core stuff. So the way you can build those up, planks, builds core stability and endurance. If you can start out doing like 30-second planks, once they get easier, move to 45, move to a minute. That's a way to progressively overload the rectus abdominis. Then you got crunches, which targets the abdominal muscles directly. Crunches are also argued to work a lot of where your hip connects to the and your legs connect to your core. But for a long time, crunches were considered the way to get abs, so I threw it in there. Everybody's done a crunch too, easy to imagine. You got Russian twists, which is pretty much like you're sitting up in like the top position of a crunch, but then you're going to twist side to side and touch your elbow to each side of the ground. And that engages your obliques, which is, like we mentioned from the muscle from our previous two lessons. The obliques are kind of on the sides of your rectus abdominis. So that's like the side of your stomach, if that makes sense, for rotational strength. Then you got leg raises. So if you think about, there's a couple ways to do this. You can like hang from a pull-up position and just raise your knees up to a 90 degrees perpendicular to your chest or your stomach. Or you can there's another way. Most of those pull-up machine or pull-up bars actually have this like thing where you can kind of rest your elbows in this pad and hold yourself up that way and then raise your legs. Either way works. Focuses on the lower abdominal muscles. And then hanging knee raises. I guess that's what I was explaining. I was just explaining to you a hanging knee raise. I apologize. A leg raise would be like, instead of just bringing your knees up, you want to keep your whole leg straight and bring your ankles all the way up. So that's the difference. That's a far more advanced movement. That's kind of more difficult. I would definitely start with hanging knee raises, effective for overall core development, because you can definitely squeeze at the bottom there or at the top, and then move to leg raises later, where you're keeping the whole leg straight and stiff, and you're just moving the whole thing at once like that. So also for core, you can do back extensions, where you're kind of starting. There's it's a really specific machine. I don't know what it's called. It's not really a machine either. Well, I do. I know what I call it. It's just the back extension thing, right? But you're laying with your ankles supported in the bottom, and then it's like you're laying with your hip up against a pad, but there's nothing up on the front of your body. So then you just lay back down into it, bring your head towards the ground, and then you're going to use your back to extend backwards up in it. And there's machines for that too, but most gyms have that little I don't want to call it a machine, that little contraption you can sit in and do back extensions. But that's also good for core as well. So now that you have a basal understanding of potential movements to incorporate in a weight training session, we're going to talk about warm up and cool down. So you never want to engage your muscles at maximum capacity without a warm up. That's exactly how you tear things. That's exactly how you strain your muscles. That's just how you get injured. You always want to be sure that your warm up, even if it's just a few minutes long, occurs no matter what before you get into lifting heavy weight. Dynamic stretches and light loading prepare muscles. So you want to go through a dynamic stretch. If we talk about legs, you'll do some leg. I think commonly called like Frankenstein's, where you like throw your right leg or your left leg up and you try and touch it with your toes. You want to be doing some lunges to the side. You want to be doing to stretch those abductors and adductors. You want to be doing some butt kickers, stretch the quads. So anything that you are moving while stretching the muscles is what you want to do. And then you can do some light loading stuff. So you should be doing some light loading stuff. So before you go to your actual working set range, like the weight that is actually difficult for you, start by doing a few sets of light loading to prepare the muscles. And so a common rule of thumb for that would be start with around 40% of your muscles capability. And I should mention that this does not mean 40% of your absolute one repetition max weight you can handle. It's 40% of the weight that is required for your set of 8 to 12 to be difficult. What's going on with the camera here? Maybe it'll come back. All right, fix the camera issue. Anyways, so 40% of the weight that it would take for your set to be difficult from between 8 and 12 reps. So if you can do 100 pounds before like 10 reps, and that's good for you, you'll want to start with 40 pounds as a warm-up, if that makes sense, because that's 40% of 100% of what's difficult for your working set. If your one rep max is 200 pounds, you don't want to do 40% of 200 pounds right off as your warm-up. That just doesn't make sense. You want to do 40% of what you're going to work on eventually. And then you work up to your top set. So a top set being, or working set commonly called, is just those sets of 3 that are actually difficult for you and where you're actually going to receive some of those micro tears from the work you're doing. Static stretching to relieve tightness post-workout. That's a cool down. You want to also incorporate some mobility exercises. You can do those before or after. Sometimes mobility exercises actually are helpful to warming up the body because you're using strength and flexibility, right? So that would essentially equate to some light loading eventually. Once you get to a point where body weight workouts are not as difficult for you, those might be acceptable to do as a way to warm up. But definitely for cool down as well. Once you're already loose, kind of push yourself to be even more loose with the mobility exercises. But overall, a warm up and a cool down, warm up specifically, are absolutely essential to preventing injury. You don't ever want to just run right into something, start throwing up some weight, and then end up, you kind of hear these crunching noises in your shoulder, your knees start popping. Not a great experience. Definitely want to be warm no matter what, even if it takes an extra 5 minutes, right? So let's move my camera here. Let's talk about creating your routine. So what you're going to want to do, and if you haven't been taking notes so far, at least take notes here. And I would encourage you, honestly, just rewind and start taking notes. But anyways, you want to base your workouts off muscle groups involved in compound lifts. So what do I mean by that? For example, a bench press involves chest, shoulders, and triceps. So when I go to the gym, it's a common way to, I think on this one we have consider common training splits on the bottom. We'll talk about that in a second, but it's common to just have people do only chest on Monday, only arms on Tuesday, shoulders Wednesday, core or whatever, like the glutes and calves or glutes and hamstrings Thursday, calves and quadriceps Friday, take 2 days off. Or what's also very common is people will do what's called push-pull legs, which is that PPL. You see on that bottom point. I guess I should have put this as a second point, but push-pull legs, meaning bench press involves chest, shoulders, and triceps, and all 3 of those muscle groups are involved in push movements. So what's common is your compound lift being bench press. It's like, okay, well, what do I use in that one bench press movement? I use those 3 muscle groups. So in this workout as a whole, I'm going to do a few sets a few exercises for each of those muscle groups. And I'll start with bench press. Okay, so it might look like you go do bench press. Now you're done. You're going to do some cable flies for your chest. Okay, now let's do some lateral raises for the shoulders, some front raises. Let's move into some triceps. We'll do some push downs, skull crushers, and you're done. That's a lot. That's a lot of sets. Maybe I would, if you're going to do 6 exercises, maybe I would decrease the amount of sets I'm doing per exercise because you don't want to over fatigue yourself. The goal here is not to just absolutely kill yourself. Like the goal here is to be methodical and to get to a point where you are effectively, you're doing enough to where it's difficult, but you're not doing enough to where you can't recover for it by the next time you need to hit that muscle group. So that's an option. Push-pull legs. Some people will do one full upper body day and they go super hard and they won't do another one for another week. And then 2 days later, they'll do a lower body day. Same thing. But either way, you want to aim to target, no matter what it is, you want to aim to target each muscle group once a week to begin and twice if you're an advanced lifter. So no matter what split people are doing, and a split is just like your constant weekly routine, right? No matter what split you choose to go after or to incorporate, you're going to want to be sure that you're at least targeting each muscle group once a week to begin, and you can move on to twice a week once you start feeling more confident and your strength starts to go up. You're recovering well. So right now, I'm on twice a week, kind of. I'll explain my split. The way I do it is, and this is just based off my experience. Once again, you got to go out and experience these different options because I've tried each of those splits: the PPL, upper lower, Arnold, bro, the bro split. That one's funny. What I do is I'll do 3 days on. So I'll do a chest and tricep because those are compound together, right? And then I'll do a back and bicep compound together. I'll do legs and then I'll rest. And then I'll do a chest back. And then I'll do arms, shoulders, and then I'll do legs and then rest. So it's like an 8-day split, 3 on, 1 off. It really doesn't matter what the split looks like as long as you are doing between 3 and 4 sessions per week and you're adapting your weight and your intensity as strength progresses. You focus on major muscle groups for balanced development. You're not just doing, arms only. And you target each muscle group once a week, at least. When you're beginning, do once, then switch to twice. So as long as those middle 3 bullets, I really should have just put that bottom bullet as the second one. But as long as those middle 3 bullets are being achieved, it doesn't really matter what your split looks like. As long as you are overall having a balanced development of each muscle group and you're hitting them each once a week, you're good. And you're training more than just twice a week, right? You don't want to just get into this habit of, I didn't have time today, so I'm just not going to go. Or I didn't really feel like it. So then you end up, after the week's already passed by, you've only been twice. Structure yourself so that you're actually going 3 to 4 to begin. I go, like I said, I'm 3 days on, 1 day off. So some weeks I'm in the gym 6 days a week, some days 5. Because I'm not going by weekly schedules, I'm going by 8 days, right? But I've been doing this for 7 years, like I said. So start as a goal for beginning progression, 3 to 4, move up to 5, move up to 6, as your strength progresses, as you're getting better at what you're doing. And while we're on the slide, I'll just explain the Arnold split is pretty much what I do. The Arnold split was he did like push. If you don't know who Arnold is, Arnold Schwarzenegger, he's the Terminator. He's a famous bodybuilder. Just absolute all around. He's the governor of California. If you don't know who that is, just Google him. And I don't really know anybody who doesn't know who that is. Maybe if you're pretty young. But anyways, he did pretty much what I do, where you do a push-pull leg, and then you switch to chest, back, and arms and shoulders. I just like that because I feel like my arms are a weak factor of my physique. So I'm trying to give them their own day, if that makes sense. And the bro split it's actually very common for beginners. That's the one I started on. It's pretty much where you just do one muscle group per day and you do that 5 days a week and then you just restart. So you take the weekend off and you do it again. So that's perfect because that's 3 to 4. 5 sessions is fine. You can do that as a beginner, especially if your lifts are only like 45 minutes because you're only hitting one muscle group, right? Maybe 30 minutes even. That works just fine. But I was hitting all the major muscle groups in a week, and I was hitting each muscle group 1 time per week. So that's actually perfect. But those are the different types of really common splits. Obviously, people make their own. There's a bunch more out there that exist. You can do your own research on which one, maybe fits your weekly schedule best, or just develop your own, as long as you're hitting those middle 3 points. I'll quit talking about the same thing. All right. So now that you've received information on potential workouts, potential exercises for each muscle group, you understand the 3 main points that are going to make you successful so long as you follow them, no matter what your split is. Let's have you think about the next steps. All right. So start thinking, if you haven't already, make some mental notes, make some real notes about developing a routine. You want to find, and then once you've done that, I actually want you, if you don't already have a place to work out, if you don't live in like an apartment that already has like a part of the amenities in a gym, or I wrote up there in the military because that was me for a while too. Every military base has a gym. If you don't have a place to work out currently, if you don't have a place to try these kind of exercises out, go and get you a membership. Some gyms are, they're not as nice, but they're cheaper, and that's just fine to start with. Some are real expensive, and they get into like offering classes and things like that. Most commercial gyms or community gyms, community being like if you live in an apartment complex, but most commercial gyms are what they call them, that are like nationwide chains, or sometimes statewide chains. They're pretty affordable. Like the one back home for me, $10 a month. That $10 a month that you're spending on, Netflix, you justify that, and it's just fine. So why not a gym? So with that said, if you don't have a place to work out, your obvious first step is you got to have a place to do it. So go find you a place that you can continuously and consistently make it to try out this method of training. And then once you've thought about developing your routine, while you're doing it, just think about the fact that you just need to start somewhere and gain some experience. And what I mean by that is, if all you did was you literally just took, let's just go through this real quick. Look, if you literally just took, this right here, that was all you did for a chest day. You're doing the bro splits. You're going to do chest, back, shoulders, arms, whatever. If you took this and you took like 4 of those and you made that your back day, you took this, made this your shoulder day, took this, made it arms, glutes, hamstrings, quads, calves, core, and you incorporate a warm-up and cool down. If that was all you did, you would be starting somewhere, right? That would be just fine. And that's why I made this slide, right? Or this slide deck, is that this is giving you enough information to go and take, okay, so I didn't know what I was doing previously. I have some information on how to do these kind of things, what to use, where to go. Let me go try it. And that's when you start to gain experience, right? And the experience will teach you, as long as you're following that last point, learn as much as you can. The experience will teach you over time more than like anything that you could pay for in the meet. Like obviously you can get a coach and they'll like have you, like, oh, okay, get down, do this exact movement, do it for this exact many reps, do it for this long. Oh, your form looks bad, do that here. And that's not a bad option either. So that's why I wrote it down. Either do it on your own coaching, read books. I guess for copyright infringement, I shouldn't name any books, but there's a lot of books out there that, that I've read that have helped me for sure in developing even these slides. I mean, but this is all just from my own mind. I didn't copy any of this, but what came from my mind had to come from somewhere to begin with, right? And then social media too. Go follow some influencers. I mean, people are posting free content every day. I post free content every day on my accounts about how to get better, how to do certain exercises, how to incorporate gym concepts that maybe you don't think about all that time, nutrition tips, things like that. As long as you are starting somewhere, you're just trying something, you will gain experience over time that will be essential to your growth and that will lead to you understanding and knowing even more. That's all I have to say about that. So keep an open mind, start somewhere, use what we've taught you in these last few lessons, and just learn as much as you can. Just go do it from experience. Send questions in the chat. Talk to me about it. Use YouTube for like, oh, maybe I don't really understand what an RDL is, what a Romanian deadlift is exactly. Maybe I should go watch this video. Do it, Just go start somewhere. That's all we're trying to get you here, is just start somewhere. Start with these exercises that we've given you. Go get your gym membership and get in there and get after it. And with that said, that was an hour long lesson, probably the longest one we'll have, but well worth the watch. Make sure you guys are, keeping track of those note takers and throwing questions in the chat if you have them. With that, we will see you for the next lesson.